Talk 1240.
There's something here that's not really a problem in and of itself, but the mentality behind it is, well, to put it in their terms, problematic. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. Now, this is a little bit weird. It's an odd topic, but it speaks to, I don't know if our society is the right way to put it, but it speaks to a mentality that's become rather prevalent in recent years. And by the way, there's going to be a debate on the police at 2 p.m. Next week. It's going to be Eric Judd and Confederate Mike versus me and David Tulis and Tex from Cowboy with Tex. That's going to be next week here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Now, this is a odd study that the UN has put out. The United Nations, of course, that mighty establishment, which has been there since like the 40s or something, and it's really not done a whole lot of good that we can discern. At least it hasn't really done anything that couldn't have been done just as well by some other entity. It's simply because the UN was there that no one else decided to do anything about it. You know what I mean? So a UN agency is now backtracking and expressing some regret over a cyber violence report, which they put out. Now, cyber violence is an interesting phrase because there's not any physicality to the internet. Right, like the cyberspace does not have a physicality to it. Now, the computers themselves do, but the entity in which we are using has no physical aspect or traits at all. It just is something which exists in servers. You might say that the non-volatile flash memory cells that adjust or the magnetic information stored on hard disks are the physical aspect of the internet. But really, cyberspace in the traditional sense does not have a physicality to it. So cyber violence is something that I don't really understand because definitionally it can't really exist. The definition of violent, by the way, is using or involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, kill, or kill someone or something. So there can't be violence on the internet. There can be depictions of violence. There can be threats of violence, but cyber violence itself can't really be a thing. I don't understand how that is any sort of thing at all. How? Well, on Wednesday, United Nations agency that published a report about cyber violence against women and girls, I think there's a distinction there, formally retracted the report following criticism from the video games industry and different lobbyists and advocates, even for online abuse victims. So on September the 24th, there's an issue by there was a report that was issued by the International Telecommunications Union that was published on the same day that the United Nations hosted a symposium at its New York headquarters that gathered women from all across the world to talk about the internet's potential as a platform for harassment and abuse. That's been going on for years and years. Harassment and abuse on the internet is not anything new. It's been going on for years and years. Now, that doesn't mean it's an okay thing or anything like that, but it's something that is there and has been there for kind of forever. Look back at Usenet. I mean, come on. You see some of the raids that went on Usenet back in even like the late 80s? That stuff is harsh compared to what we see now. Like what we see now is nothing compared to what happened back in the late 80s. We're actually better off now than we were when it came to internet harassment. The BBC, I believe, or maybe it was Channel 4 in the UK, one of those UK TV stations actually ran a piece on this internet troll from Usenet, and that was in the mid to early 90s. So this is not a new concept, and yet we're starting to only just now notice it. I guess we're only just starting to realize that it might possibly be an issue. But then again, what do you want the state to do about it? You see, that's the fundamental difference in approaches between our side and the other side. And I've been talking with other people about that whole idea of how we handle things. You know, here at Hot News Talk Radio, we're pretty much mostly rather you might describe us as right-wing conservative. I wouldn't call myself that. I would say I'm more anarchistic than anything. I'm sort of a, I don't know, I guess classical liberal would be the way to put what I am. I believe in as little state as possible. I don't want there to be a state, really, because I see no use for it. A collapse of the state would not be a bad idea, if then you'd be asking me. But nobody asks me about these things, so I tend to not express that very often. That's just my way of thinking. And I realize that that's a highly unrealistic ideal, but it's also something that is an ideal, and ideals tend to be highly unrealistic anyway, so we'll just roll with that. But anyway, you get what I'm going for. Some people might describe me as right-wing conservative. I wouldn't, but somebody who's not as well versed in political stances, I guess, might describe me as that. I'm certainly not a Republican, never have been, never will be, and I'm definitely not a Democrat either, never have been, never will be, and I'm certainly not a socialist or really any sort of ist. I'm a capitalist, I guess. Yeah, I'm definitely a capitalist. I'm a free marketer. But that's actually the best way to sum up what I am. I'm a free marketer, because I don't think that government intervention is the best way to handle things. And there's evidence to support that, and we keep seeing it popping up that government intervention tends to be a bad idea. But that idea is the fundamental difference between our side and the other side, a lack of innovation, or intervention, I should say. Innovation's great, but it tends to be hampered by the state. So what we have here is these people, these women, appealing to the UN. We had Zoe Quinn. I'm not sure who she is. Anita Sarkeesian was also there. Again, she did like a video series. It's called Tropes Against Women, and it's not marketed at me. I'll put it that way. It's not meant for me to watch, this Tropes Against Women thing. Plus, the only games that I really play are like Team Fortress 2 and Heroes of the Storm anyway, and I don't really see rampant sexism in those games. I guess you could say that the fact that there's not a female character in Team Fortress 2 is somehow sexist. I don't know how, but I guess forced inclusion is part of feminism. I don't know. I'm not a feminist by any stretch of the imagination, although I do think that everyone has equal rights, right? I mean, that is true. Everyone has equal right. You can vote, you can have a job, equal pay, all that cool stuff. Hey, nice. But when it comes to forced inclusion or forced diversity, that just doesn't work for me. That just seems ridiculous and unrealistic, and it's not a good way to operate in the business place either. A lot of these people are not really realizing that, in the business marketplace, you're totally unhireable if you walk in with pink hair and half of your head shaved and 40 piercings, and you wonder why they don't hire you. It's like, oh, well, maybe we're trying to run a professional business environment, and right now societal norms don't really conform to that appearance as being very professional. Thus, we can't. Everyone is as open-minded as you might be or I might be. We just have to recognize that, right? It's just how it is, and we can't force that because that's a good way to lose business. I'm not going to take that risk. Sometimes business risks are appropriate and sometimes not really. And this would be the not really case. So sorry, I can't hire you. And your degree in gender studies isn't going to help you out either. That's just how it is. That's just business, But the thing is with this whole idea is that there's a push for intervention. Notice it's an appeal to the UN. Right? The UN doesn't have very much enforcement power, especially in the States. When has the UN ever actually enforced much of anything here? I mean, seriously, think about it. When have you seen the blue helmets come in and enforce something? Never. Not here anyway, not directly. That happens in Africa. That happens in Eastern Europe. But really, that's about it. I mean, yeah, we had Somalia, and that was a mess. And we had Serbia. That was a mess. I guess they target countries which names start with S. That was the focus of the UN. But notice that it's an appeal to the state that these two women are proposing. It's an appeal to not even a state. Actually, it's more just an entity. It's an appeal to the UN. It's an appeal for someone else to do our work. And that's not my prerogative. I don't want other people to do what I should be doing unless I'm really lazy, and I am sometimes. But I don't want other people to do things for me. I don't like that. I'm much more independent than that. I don't want other people to just do things for me. That seems very childish, I guess. It's why would I want other people to do things when I can do them just as well and suited to my purposes? I was raised in an environment where independence was very much valued. I didn't go in for the public schooling system. I've never been to a classroom of any sort, except for a college classroom, maybe once or twice, and I didn't have much use for that either. I'm not formally educated. in any sort of any stretch of the imagination. I'm not formally educated in any way. And that being the case, I guess I have a bit of a unique perspective. I don't want to put myself on a platform, but I guess I have a bit of a unique perspective in the sense that I'm not someone who was schooled. I'm someone who was educated. I didn't go to the whole system. I don't like systems anyway. I didn't go to the whole system thing where you're taught to not be independent because you need to rely on other people to teach you things. You can't do any sort of independent research. You're not encouraged to be independent. You have to conform to standardized tests, which really don't work. It's like judging a fish on its ability to climb a tree. Why would you do that? The fish is really good at swimming, but not at climbing trees. So you're judging it based on a prerogative that really shouldn't be judged on. And that's how I see the schooling system. And a lot of other people too. I'm not unique in that. So I didn't go to the public schooling system. And honestly, if I had, I probably wouldn't have lasted very long. I would have flunked out in about 3 weeks, to be quite honest with you. TBH, I would have flunked out in about a week if I got into the regular schooling system. Fortunately, I didn't. And here I am with a high school diploma. So hooray. So this is the difference in approach, though. I want businesses to handle things. I want myself and a group of friends to handle any problems that we might have. I want there to be organized groups to work on problems to fix things. And not necessarily in the union sense, but more in a, I guess not even a committee sense, but just a group of people who decide to fix a problem without asking permission first. Appealing to the state is the ultimate in bending over. You know, you're appealing to the state. Come on. You know, what's the state going to fix? What's the UN of all things going to fix? This, and they know this. This is a move to get on a platform. The UN is one of the biggest international platforms you can ever be on. So it's a genius move in that sense, but it's also highly ineffective. And because I don't like their agenda, I like that it's highly ineffective. But my tip from me to them would be, use your own platform, and really you're not going to get anything done appealing to the state. That's not going to fix any problems. Any sort of bill that you try to get passed is most likely going to be slapped down by the Supreme Court like immediately. Appeals will happen. That's just how it is. But anyway, one lengthy takedown that was posted by Jamie King was able to discredit about 30% of the citations in this UN report. They range from circular, the UN citing itself, to dubious, citing Wikipedia, okay, to baffling, just straight up blank entries. More critics followed, including symposium participant and Crash Override founder Zoe Quinn, who pointed out that the sloppiness of the paper could kneecap various efforts to combat online abuse and hate speech. But the problem is, how do you combat online abuse and hate speech? Not with the state, because saying things is actually not illegal. Now, threats can actually be seen as violence. Slander is a illegal thing, right? Like, you can sue people for slander. You can sue people for libel, but it's not a criminal thing. Keep that in mind. It's not a criminal thing. There are damages, but it's not necessarily criminal damages. It's more of a civil damage. So again, that's where lawsuits come in. And that's a lengthy process, and that's a complicated process, but it works sometimes if the judge sides with you. You have a right to a jury of your peers and all that, but if the judge sides with you on a civil case, you pretty much got it cinched. But that's probably not going to happen in a case like this. So online abuse is not something that can be fixed. We have to recognize that there are some problems which are just prevalent. They're always going to be there. People are always going to be terrible. That's just how it is. Welcome to the world. People are terrible. They're always going to be, and you can't fix that. And you can work around it, yeah, but people are just always going to be awful. And working around that is an option, but trying to fix that is really not. You can try, but it's not going to work. Now, you know, platforms like Twitter can say we're going to remove abusive speech or whatever, and they can do that. And platforms like not Wikipedia, pardon. Well, they could do that. Like Facebook can come out and say we're going to remove content, and it can do that. Facebook can do that. But as a society, that's just not going to happen. It's like the whole stop bullying thing. It's not going to work because people are always going to bully each other. That's how the real world works. It's not good, but that's how it is. Raising awareness isn't going to stop bullying. I don't know if bullying's gotten any better or any worse in recent years. I've not read any studies, but I guarantee you it's never going to disappear unless someone rigs the numbers. You're not going to see bullying has stopped in the year 2017. That's never going to happen. That's totally unrealistic to expect that. So all these different tax dollars that are going into the stamp out bullying campaigns from the ad council, it's not going to fix anything. You know, you tell a bully that, hey, bullying is wrong. Well, you think he's going to stop? You're like, man, you're right. I never realized that. He doesn't care. You know, you can't make people be good people. It doesn't work. That happens either through grace or good teaching. And that the first applies to the latter anyway. So it's just, you can't force people to be good people because people are bad. Welcome to the real world. People are terrible. You can't fix all of our problems. It's kind of like the poor. There's always going to be the poor. You can't fix that. Or the homeless. There's always going to be the homeless. Some people want to be homeless. That's why they're not in homeless shelters. Now, homeless shelters, granted, are kind of dangerous places in some cases, but you get the idea. Some people just want to be independent. Some people just want to break away from that system. Some people are lashing out because they're angry at the system. So trying to fix people who are angry at the system with the system is really a terrible idea. It's like, well, you're angry about public schooling. Maybe we should put you in a public school for re-education. I just break out. I mean, come on. Man, I would have gotten in so much trouble if I had actually gone to a public school. I can't even imagine all the different things I do. I'd probably put thermite on locks. I'd be the ultimate. I'd be that goth punk kid who everyone's worried about. If I were in school, I wouldn't be the not that kid who I am now, I guess. I don't know. Although I do see the merits in late 70s goth music, I will say. Some of it's actually pretty good. That transition from punk into goth and then punk into new wave and then punk into what we're now labeling as post-punk is actually a really cool transition. But anyway, you get the idea. You can't fix society with society because society is terrible and it's always going to be. And some would argue that one position is terrible. Some would argue that the other position is terrible. Really, it's all just awful. And that's just how it is. It's not all awful, though. I guess I should correct myself because not everything in society is terrible. There are some merits to it, actually. We do have, especially here in the South, a tendency to help each other. We're not all terrible. And that's not because some guy in some office put out a PSA that told us to help each other. It's because our parents told us to. It's because of grace that we help each other. It's not because of an ad council thing that came out and said, if you just help each other, then the better America can be built. That's not why we do it. That might be a partial deciding factor in why someone decided to stop and help somebody, but that's not the ultimate reason. It has nothing to do with awareness or, if you help people, that's okay. Nothing at all to do with it. So these different ads and raising awareness, it doesn't fix anything. It's never going to fix anything. And the sooner we realize that, the better we'll be. Because quite honestly, this whole nonsense of, well, we just need to raise awareness that bullying is a thing. Like, they already know that. People who are going to be bullies are going to be bullies no matter what you do. Put them in a re-education camp. You know what? They're going to come out and be angry. And then these bullies are going to graduate from school and they'll go off and be a cop or something. And that's just how it is. And it's just ridiculous to try to fix the problem with awareness. It's like breast cancer is a terrible thing. There's no denying that. Breast cancer is awful. And I know people who have had it. And I'm not going to say, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, because it is. It's a terrible thing. Lots of things are terrible things. But don't you think we know about it already? Like wearing pink ribbons. I already know breast cancer is a thing. Everybody in America knows that breast cancer is a terrible thing. Nobody's going to say, well, it's not really a big deal. Everybody knows it's pretty awful. So why do we keep trying to raise awareness about it? I'm doing this run to raise awareness. Like, I'm already aware. I know. Did you know that men can get it? You might not have, but that's a thing. Men can get breast cancer too, and women can get it. And it's terrible on either end. So raising awareness, what are you doing, man? There's other things that actually do need to have awareness raised, like the dangers of overprescriptions of drugs for people who've been diagnosed with ADHD. We're giving these kids meth, for heaven's sake. Desoxyn, that medicine that we give kids who have ADHD, that's meth. I'm not joking. We actually give meth to kids in small doses because it calms them down or whatever. Adderall, we're giving our kids amphetamines. Now, that's something that some awareness could be raised, because parents don't know that. A lot of parents, they'd say, well, the doctor said so, so I guess it's cool. And yeah, there are great doctors out there. But you know what? Some of them are also being paid off. That's just human nature. People are going to be terrible. People will find any excuse to be terrible, most of the time anyway. You can get pretty much anything done if you throw enough money at it. And again, that's just how it is. But some awareness is good, but over-awareness just gets to be nauseating, to the point where I'm sick of hearing about breast cancer. And that's kind of, I think, the opposite of the effect that they're trying to reach for. And it's a failure. It's a massive failure. This is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. We're everywhere. You can listen live, actually, to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Check us out on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, and then search for Hot News Talk Radio. Check us out on the Hot News Camel at Hot News Talk Radio here at hotnewstalkradio.com. Just go to YouTube and then search for, you guessed it, Hot News Talk Radio, and you can listen live here at Hot News Talk Radio. After the break, you can call in 800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. You can call in And we got some nice words from all the different people who have helped us to be here at Hot News Talk Radio, coming up in about actually 26 seconds here at Hot News Talk Radio. And I should remind you as well that Clutch with Keon Rose is up next here at Hot News Talk Radio. He's our resident sports expert. He was talking to his brother yesterday, who happens to sound precisely like him. So if you want to hear a clone talking to himself, you can you can listen to his show. Just go to YouTube and search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you can watch his show that he did yesterday. It was really good here at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brandon Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
The Fed raising rates, China's economy in trouble. Don't let headlines derail your long-term financial strategy. I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Patrick Neal. At Edward Jones, we provide the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Stop by my office next to the Target Shopping Center in Hickson, or call me at 423-870-7894. That's Patrick Neal at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. 3 Republicans are making their pitches to fellow lawmakers for the House Speaker position. Republican Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, the frontrunner but not a favorite of a conservative bloc of colleagues.
A group of more than 30 who make up the Freedom Caucus are endorsing Florida Republican Daniel Webster, saying Webster is best equipped to earn back the trust of the American people. That would prevent McCarthy from winning an outright majority of the House, 218 votes, when the full House votes for Speaker October 29th.
Fox Radio's Jared Halpern.
Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz is also running for Speaker.
Some South Carolina residents in coastal counties are warned to stay alert for possible evacuation as floodwaters rise. And the estate of an Oregon woman who died after the Murphy bed, also known as a wall bed she was sleeping in, collapsed and locked shut, filing a wrongful death suit against the manufacturer. Fox News, we report. You decide.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
I was going to talk about Volkswagen, but there are two things now that popped up on my agenda that I gotta push. I gotta push my agenda. McCarthy, by the way, has dropped out of the race for House Speaker, and the election has been postponed. So Kevin McCarthy is no longer up for election for House Speaker. Now, that is an odd revelation, to be sure, because he seemed like the most likely candidate, but there he is. He's gone. McCarthy is now dropped out of the race for House Speaker. Now, this, of course, is looming as there's quite a few questions about the future of the global economy. Some are wondering if the GOP actually perhaps is hoping for a crash course. That would be an interesting strategy, to be sure, but not one that I necessarily approve of. But I'm not the one making the decisions, now am I? And that's possibly part of the problem. Now, speaking of people my age making decisions, I'm 20, so I'm not old, but I'm not young either. In fact, if you yourself are old, you would say that I'm quite young. And if you're younger than me, you probably think that I'm an old man. So go figure. The real old man here, by the way, is Keon Rose. He's he's on from 1 to 2, and he is 5 years older than me. So I consider him to be essentially ancient. He's just this ancient guy. And I don't know how he manages to be as hip and cool as he is, but I'm happy for him. I don't know how they managed to let him out of the retirement home, but here he is. Clutch with Keon Rose is on from 1 to 2 here at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. He's an old man, 5 years older than me. I don't know. Jeez, man. I don't know how he manages to stay as hip as he does. But anyway, the demographic that I'm talking about is really kind of my demographic, because the 18 to 35, I don't trust that demographic to make very wonderful decisions on the political spectrum, because people who are going to be this age, who are also going to be politically active, tend to be kind of terrible, is the thing. We're not very good at politics as a demographic. I'll put it that way. We are not very good at demographics, or we're not very good at politics as a demographic. Reason being, spoonerism there. Reason being, we are either too cynical or too optimistic. It's one or the other. We're not world-wise. I'm not a world-wise sort of guy. I have some insight because I do a lot of research, but I'm not a world-wise sort of guy. The point that I'm trying to get at here is a little bit weird. I've been seeing on Twitter, by the way, recently there was Spencer Stone, one of the guys who's on the train in France, who managed to stop some guy who had an AK-47, apparently. He's one of the people who managed to stop that guy. He was apparently stabbed in California, non-life-threatening. They think he's going to be okay. But something kind of odd sprung out of the Twitter replies to Fox's tweet about that. Now, I know Twitter is not the place to go if you want any sort of constructive discourse. It's good for news, but the actual human beings who are responding to these news stories generally have nothing very interesting to say other than just I blame Obama, or it's probably the Muslims, or ban guns, or ban knives, or some statement to the contrary about don't ban guns or don't ban knives, but I'm going to say that in a very passive-aggressive way, like Obama is probably going to try to ban knives now, or something along those lines. Really, nothing very interesting comes out of Twitter when it comes to replies, except for the replies that we see, of course, at Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter, which actually has a pretty good Twitter following, several thousand if the numbers are to be believed, and I have no reason to think they lie. You can go to Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter, and you can follow us now. We are America's only social media radio network here on Hot News Talk Radio, the newsroom of the future here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and Hot News Talk Radio .com, where you can go and see our website there. So the reply that I saw was, well, we should just put America under martial law. That's the only solution. That's what this one guy said. And of course, this guy is probably some sort of raving lunatic who thinks that the military can solve every problem. But lots of people actually agreed with him. Now, some people were vehemently opposed to his idea, but I actually saw people agreeing with him. And that's kind of frightening. Now, here's the reason why that's a terrible idea. Because we're talking about people who are 18, you can get in the military at 17 with parents' permission, all the way up to around 35. I don't trust them. I don't trust people in that age demographic to make any sort of meaningful or good decisions. These guys pumped up with testosterone. I don't really trust them to run the country very well, especially considering that the military leadership is as bad as it is. I don't trust it. Military law, martial law, which is military law, sounds like a very, very bad idea. Because military is very conformist, and I am not at all. So I'd probably be shot within 3 seconds of martial law being declared, which is, of course, why I have my own personal interest in mind when it comes to not wanting there to be martial law. Generally, it's just a bad idea. Any country where there has been martial law has generally ended up not working too well afterwards. Plus, they tended to not want to relinquish martial law. So I don't trust the Generation Kill guys to run the country in any sort of meaningful way. Of course, there's always the National Guard. There's always the Air National Guard. There's all these different military installations and such to worry about. But no, martial law is a bad idea. We all know it. I don't think anyone truly believes that martial law is the only solution or is the solution to go by. But man, it just surprises me to see that people on Twitter are pushing for that. It just seemed odd to me that anyone actually truly wants there to be martial law. Go figure. Well, Volkswagen has run into quite a few issues in the last month or so. In case you dug yourself under a rock and you didn't know that, what's going on here is Volkswagen has run into some problems with emissions standards. There's a recall that's starting in Europe. The U.S. is now awaiting a final ruling from the EPA, and there's going to be a hearing here in Chattanooga coming up quite soon. In fact, today, believe it or not. So the beleaguered German car manufacturer Volkswagen, according to Ars Technica, is going to be beginning. There we go. The largest recall in its history for vehicles that have been affected by the diesel emissions test scandal. The recall is going to begin in the new year once German authorities have approved the company's plans to fix the cars. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. The recall is expected to be complete by the end of the year 2016. In an interview with German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, I think is how you say. My German is very rusty to the point where it's falling apart from oxidation. New Volkswagen CEO Matthias Müller said that while the company hopes to fix all affected European cars by the end of 2016, it is still awaiting approval from the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA as we commonly know it, before the same recall can happen in the U.S. A software update would work for most cars, but some vehicles would actually need a new fuel injection system and catalytic converters. Uh-oh. Now there's a problem. Now the other problem is that this is also kind of not environmentally a big deal because, you see, it's actually these diesel cars are cleaner than gasoline cars. I mean, seriously, these diesel cars are cleaner than like most of the cars that we're seeing driving on our streets today anyway. Like, seriously, we see some of these giant gas-guzzling Ford F-250s that everyone insists on buying for some reason that they don't even use as trucks, by the way. You see these guys who drive these gigantic, GMC huge trucks that they don't drive as trucks. They just drive them as elevated Cadillacs, which is ridiculous, really. I mean, there's even like a Escalade truck, for heaven's sake, that people don't drive as trucks. They drive them as giant lifted luxury cars. And I hate that, because I don't like big vehicles. Not because I don't think you should drive big vehicles. I just personally don't like them. I think they're ugly. They're terrible. They're the perfect example of overcompensation. They are everything that's wrong with car culture, is looking at how big we can make it. And I can't stand that. But you know what? Hey, you can do that if you want. I hate it, but you can do what you want, is the thing. See, that's me being libertarian, or that's me being an advocate for your rights. I don't think big cars should be outlawed. I hate them, but I don't think they should be outlawed. You should be able to own a giant truck that belches smoke if you want to. Because, hey, you know what? That's your right. You can do that. Who am I to tell you not to? You can do that. I'm not going to say we should outlaw giant trucks or we should make it so that everyone has to ride a bike a certain day of the week. That's stupid. Not only is it stupid, it's also unrealistic. And it's also very inconveniencing for those of us who don't know how to ride a bike. Just kidding. I actually do know how to ride a bike, but I will not wear a helmet. You can't make me. I will not be compelled to wear a helmet because I hate my head. So I bet my head on not wearing a helmet. It's just, man, the whole mentality of I don't like it, thus it should be illegal is one of the worst things to come out of the turn of the century, really, or I guess the liberal revolution. Is that a thing? The hippies growing up and saying, I don't like it, thus it should be a crime. I can't stand that mentality because it's so controlling. People say, no, it's for the greater good of society. Hey, what's the greater good of society? Like, can you actually define greater good? No, because you have your own definition and I have mine. We have two totally different ideas of what the greater good for society is. So there's not any singular definition of what that is, unless you want to use a biblical example. But then again, someone's going to disagree with that. Now, while I believe that is the greater good for society, someone's going to disagree. And so it's not actually good for him. So you can't cite greater good for society as any sort of reason for doing anything because it's not a meaningful example of anything at this point. So that's a terrible example. I say we need more bike lanes because it's for the greater good of society, like they're doing here in Chattanooga. Oh man, these horrible bike lanes. Come on. They're putting up these bike lanes in Chattanooga and it's just like, what are you doing? I mean, the road layout of Chattanooga is bad as it is. Think about downtown. Now, I mean, I know. I love downtown Chattanooga. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Chattanooga is a bad city. I'm certainly not. It's a great city. But it's great despite all these dumb changes we keep making to it. Come on, man. Bike lanes downtown where there's hardly any parking, where pedestrians are almost getting run over anyway, and then you want to put in some bike lanes? Are you nuts? Actually, they are. So go figure. They actually are kind of nuts. I know why they're doing it. It's to appeal to the people who ride bikes. I guess it's to appeal to the green people. It's to appeal to the younger hipster guys who have they have the man buns and the beards, and they wear cardigans all year long, and they listen to the Antlers and think they're really sophisticated, and they got their Crosley horrible, awful sounding with a ceramic needle, ceramic stylus, record player that they carry around. They got a backpack full of 45s. I mean the records, not the guns. And they're riding their fixies down the street on their bike lanes going, man, Chattanooga sure is a green city. I don't like those people. And I'm not going to say that they shouldn't do that. You can have your man bun and your beard and your Crosley and your terrible records and listen to the Antlers and think that that's really obscure and ride your fixie all over the place because you're being real green about it. But you know what? I don't think the city should be appealing to those people or should be catering to those people because the city shouldn't cater to anyone. Really, the city's not there to fix everyone's problems. The city's not there to make the city green. Businesses can be green if they want to be. We can, as individuals, be green if we want to be. And the funny thing is, too, these different bikes that we buy, they're made up of different materials that release horribly noxious chemicals when we produce them. So, it's not really that green considering like the whole production process of making a bike is probably a lot dirtier than just driving a car. So the whole idea of being like, I'm going to be green by proxy, I guess, even though I'm not, because I'm contributing to a manufacturing process that's very dirty. It's like, come on, man. It's such a ruse. It's such a poseur thing. It just drives me nuts. It's like the people who say, oh, I listen to obscure music because I just can't stand the mainstream stuff and all this stuff. And it's like, you know what? You're just doing it for a scene. There are people who listen to it because they think it's good. But most of the time, it's just the kids who wear the glasses with no lenses and they get tons of piercings and say they're cool and obscure for doing it. And they're just not. And I don't like those people. Because it's so insincere. I like sincerity. I don't like people who are insincere. And it's just, no thanks, man. But anyway, enough about that. As many as 11 million diesel cars worldwide have been equipped with software allegedly used, because it hasn't been proven, allegedly used to cheat emissions tests. Volkswagen now faces a mountain of costs and damage claims in addition to the recall following an investigation by the U.S. environmental regulator last month. The company has set aside $6.5 billion or euros, I should say, which equates to $7.27 billion to cover the costs as a result of this new scandal. Volkswagen has recently admitted that over 1 million UK vehicles also include this controversial defeat device, contradicting earlier statements saying that UK cars are not part of the current action in the US. Now, people are going to say Volkswagen lied. Well, Volkswagen has been deceptive, possibly. I mean, allegedly, because I'm in media and I have to say that. Allegedly, Volkswagen has been rather deceptive. But again, Deny, deny, deny. That's what you do. You're in business, someone's accusing you of something, deny, deny, deny. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't confirm those claims. Let me talk to my secretary. You'll have to refer those questions to someone higher up in the food chain than I am. Let me refer those questions over to our project manager so he can answer those for you. Deny, deny, deny. That's what they do. That's just business. That's how it works. And talking about how it's just the biggest scandal ever, it's really not. Everyone does it. It's just Volkswagen happens to be the whipping boy for this particular EPA cause or this particular economic cause, because half of it, I'm sure, is about how the German cars are, German diesel cars especially, are a little bit more efficient than some of the American gasoline cars, and GM can't be happy about that. And the U.S. has a lot of money and tax incentives that are put into GM. I remember the bailout. Have we forgotten that? Come on. So let's not pretend that this is actually about saving the environment, because it's not. And that sounds cynical, but when you're talking about government, you kind of have to be extremely cynical, because whatever the worst conclusion you can come up with when it comes to government is probably true. That's the obnoxious thing about it. It's probably actually true. Oh well. So Volkswagen has admitted that over 1 million of these cars in the UK might have the defeat device, which again is not a big deal because the diesel engines are actually really clean. And I'm not shilling for Volkswagen. I don't own a Volkswagen. Funnily enough, I actually own a GM car. So you know what? I didn't buy it. It was a gift, but still, not to sound like I'm rich because I got a car as a gift. My aunt was getting rid of it, and now I have it because we're all poor in my family. We come from poor working class people. So the emissions test scandal has rocked the once admired car manufacturer, and I'm sure plenty of people still admire the once admired car manufacturer. It has since emerged that Volkswagen has warned about the cheating emissions as far back as 2007. Former CEO of Volkswagen, Martin Winterkorn, was forced to step down after the revelations, with current CEO Matthias Müller joining from Porsche. They're all in the same family, Porsche and Volkswagen. It's all under one big umbrella. So it's just how it is. But this is not like, the scandal is not as big a deal as we might be led to believe. And something that's encouraging about the age of the internet is that a lot of people actually know that. We're seeing a lot of people who are just calling him out and saying the EPA is just being petty about this. Slap them with a fine, whatever, not a $50 billion fine or whatever they're wanting to put on them, and move forward from there. Because VW can probably afford to pay $1 billion in a fine. That's going to hurt, but they're probably going to make that money back. It's probably going to make that money back after a certain amount of time. We'll recoup our losses, they'll say, and then you move on from there. And this will all be put behind us, and we'll forget about it. And the EPA will say, you better fix those cheat devices. And VW will fix the cheat devices, and it'll be like nothing ever happened. Nobody will care. This is not a big deal, or at least it's not as big a deal as we might be led to believe. The economic or ecological impact is not nearly as large as some of the squeaky wheels are demanding that it is. So it makes me mad, I guess, because there's such a lack of science, and there's such a high and mighty attitude behind the criticism of VW, because it's like, look at how bad VW is. No car manufacturer's ever cheated on emissions. No car manufacturer ever puts out a horribly inefficient car that spews fumes everywhere. No car manufacturer does that. And then, VW comes out and does this, and they whip on VW. It's such a sham. It's so insincere. You got all these people who wouldn't have cared one way or the other, but now there's lawyers who can latch onto it. So it's the cool thing to complain about now. I just hate that whole mentality. Hey, Google has released a experimental, kind of cool, public transportation tracker in Delhi, India. So in Delhi, they have this public transportation system, kind of like we have here in Chattanooga. We got the shuttle, right? In Atlanta, they got the, what do they call it in Atlanta? It's something Metro. It's the Metro Atlanta Transportation System or something like MARTA is what it's called anyway. Metro Atlanta Regional Transportation Authority or something like that. It's like CARTA, but it's MARTA, basically. Google has continued its focus on India after it introduced an Android app, of course, because it's Google, for navigating public transport over in Delhi, which is, of course, in India. If you ever played Civilization, you're all too familiar with Delhi, and you probably tried to nuke it a few times. U.S. firm or it nuked you if you played like I did. U.S. firm last month announced plans to bring Wi-Fi to India's train stations, and now this new app is addressing another issue with commuting and traveling, which is actually, moving, getting about. Google describes the Delhi public transport app, which was created by the Google Apps team, as an experimental and designed from the ground up to make it easier for Delhi residents to get around on public transit. Because as someone who has traveled on public transit before, particularly the New York subway system, it's not easy. It's actually, especially as an outsider, I'd never even seen a subway before I went to New York this winter. Actually, it was technically last winter. It was December. As someone who had never seen a public transportation system or subway before, it was baffling and hard to navigate. Now, there probably are apps already for navigating the New York subway system. In fact, probably New York's CARTA system or whatever it is, the New York Transport Authority probably has an app. But I didn't know that, and I didn't have it at the time because my cell phone wasn't getting data in the subways. You know, surprise, surprise. So it's a problem. And Google putting out an app or even building on Google Maps potentially to add this functionality is kind of a big deal, actually, because this is going to bring functionality to the user. And notice that it's not a government program that's putting this out. It's actually Google doing it of its own accord, I would assume. It's not of its own goodwill. There's money to be made here. But still, it's a good cause, and it could be very useful for people in, say, Delhi. So this is a very useful program, very useful new system that's going to be put in place by Google. And of course, if it works in this test market in Delhi, then we'll be seeing this expanding out to other cities, probably New York City eventually. That's going to be one of the harder ones to do. Atlanta, because Atlanta's got like a one-way thing. It's basically just one line that goes back and forth. That's Atlanta's subway systems. It's not that hard to figure out. It's an interesting concept anyway. I really like the idea of a tracking system for these different public transit systems, especially buses, because the bus system it's confusing, especially as someone who's used to easy interfaces and then suddenly having to figure something out. I can do it, but it's not convenient. And when we're talking about getting from point A to point B, I want something to be as convenient as possible. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I can figure out the public transit system. Just give me enough time. But it's not convenient to do that if I'm in a hurry. Like, say, I want to get from the Statue of Liberty over to One World Trade Center, and that's kind of hard to do. You know, I want to get from Times Free Press over to, not Times Free Press. What am I thinking? I want to get from Times Square, Times Free Press. I want to get from Times Square over to One World Trade Center. You know, that's not easy on the public transit system. I can't figure that out immediately because I'm not good at that. So it's a wonderful idea that Google has come out with. I'm very excited about that. Hey, by the way, real quick, if you're using Etsy, there's some competition now from Amazon. Never-ending quest for growth on Amazon's part, which is still operating at a loss, by the way. Amazon has launched a new initiative today. Handmade at Amazon is going to be offering precisely what it sounds like: handcrafted goods from small artisans who may have previously found a home in their business for their business at Etsy. So this is, of course, direct competition with Etsy. CNET reported on it. Ars Technica is reporting on it now. Targeting already successful niche markets is becoming commonplace for Amazon. The company has long offered used goods from select retailers such as like eBay. In recent years, it's expanded into online streaming media like Netflix does. And its newer home services marketplace allows users to hire experts like a plumber, again, like Angie's List. So we're seeing a lot of services that are basically copies of other businesses, but done the Amazon way. And that's okay. I'm not criticizing that because you can do that. And if this service tends to be better than the service that it's imitating, then who are we to complain? You know, if it works and it's cheaper or it's at least affordable and it's as good as or better than the competition, cool. That's free market. So they're calling this the Etsy killer. I don't know if it's going to be the Etsy killer, but we'll have to wait and see. So if you're looking into getting into handmade goods, Amazon is a new avenue of revenue for you. I love that phrase, by the way, avenue of revenue. That should be a name for a band. Clutch with Keon Rose is up next here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 on hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.